All right, we are live. Thank you for joining me. It's Mr. Patriarch, joined by Brother Augustine. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for the invitation. How are you doing?
I'm doing not too bad. The internet could be doing better. So if I'm cut in or out, I may just put on a profile picture. Hopefully that'll fix things out. I think a combination of the rain and my mobile hotspot not being exactly up to snuff for some reason with this specific computer and nothing else. I think it may inhibit things, but hopefully not. So if you guys are having any issues in the chat, just type something and I'll try to get it sorted out. So yeah, just again, if there's any issues, type it in the chat and we'll get it squared away. So before we begin, the theme for today is Christian and spiritual themes within rock and metal music. But before we begin, I have links to Brother Augustine's stuff in the description below. Is there anything you'd like to shill before we start?
Not particularly. I mean, I don't know what links you have, but I have a couple books on Amazon under my name, Michael Witkoff. YouTube channel, Brother Augustine, rockfin.com/Brother Augustine, where you can hear my speeches from the Trad Forum and both Montanica events, as well as sneak previews of the Christ and the Minor Prophets videos that come out on Rockfin Premium a month before they are available for free on Rockfin and YouTube. But no, beyond that, I got nothing to show today.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. All right. And if you guys are new here to the channel and you dig the sort of stuff that I do, you are, of course, invited to like, comment, leave a description, and, of course, subscribe to Mr. Patriarch. Links to support the channel can be found below. As far as things for me to shill real quick, some of you guys will probably no doubt know that I am going through Konstantin Pobia Denotsiev's Reflections of a Russian Statesman. We're going through that chapter by chapter, so do not miss out on that. All right, now I'm just going to shill this on Twitter if my internet can handle two things at once. Okie dokie. So the idea that I had for this stream was kind of related to culture. So Brother Augustine and I both are fans of the metal. And one of the things that I've always found appealing about it is I think metal music has a inherently reactionary tendency in a lot of subgenres, especially in a good way. Now, metal, of course, has this sort of, it can have sort of a reputation as sort of being satanic or anti-theistic, which I think is wrong. I think the majority of bands do not fall into that category. Early on, you'd find some sort of what you'd call kind of like shock jock type of material from bands such as Venom in the 80s. They're leaning on this sort of, anti-Christian aesthetic, basically for shock value. They don't take it seriously. Of course, you do have some bands which are into the occult and whatnot, unfortunately. But by and large, I do think there is a surprising amount of metal music which is not antithetical to the Christian worldview. And a couple of ways in which this manifests outside of an explicitly Christian example. I think there is a inherent hostility to materialism, to deceit, an appreciation of authenticity, very clear acknowledgement of the dark side of humanity. So it's very anti-utopian in that sense a lot of the times. And I would argue there's very much a grasping for the transcendent in a lot of metal lyrics, implicitly or explicitly. And partially because of this and the cathartic nature of the music within metal music and the instruments and the vocals, I have found metal to be a particularly interesting genre. So, anything you'd like to add there, Brother Augustine?
Well, I think it really depends on the band, like you say, what they're going for. Obviously, groups like black metal, or I'm sorry, genres or subgenres like black metal, with the corpse paint and the pigs' heads on sticks at the shows, like bands like Mayhem and stuff like that. Obviously, that's not Christian stuff. There are bands that are, like we're going to talk about more, that are overtly Christian. There are bands that, while not being overtly Christian, often have overlap, or they put certain Christian themes in their music, whether it's meant to be Christian or not, stuff that we would certainly agree with. And hopefully we'll get into all that stuff over time. For me, it's funny. I did a show with Craig Truglia earlier today, a couple hours ago, where we got into this a little bit, where I think that ultimately, metal music doesn't exactly cultivate dispassion. But for me, as long as I'm listening to it, because that's what I grew up listening to and what I like and what I create, you're always going to want to find stuff that goes with your beliefs and at the very least doesn't say anything against it, just because what we expose our senses to has such a profound impact on our soul. It looks like Mr. Patriarch may have left the stream just now, but we're still live. Maybe his computer went out, so I'm going to keep talking. The orthodox concept of anthropology and the human person is largely revolves around the nous and the purification of the nous, the spiritual organ through which other senses are perceived, the part which, when cleansed, really invites divine grace into the soul. So we always want to be careful about what influences we're exposing ourselves to, right? We don't watch pornographic movies, obviously, right? Because we don't want to expose our senses and our nous to sin. Likewise, we don't want to listen to anti-Christian music about the evils of religion and things of that nature. And it can be tough when you're just like listening to the radio. You never know what's going to come on next, right? Unless you're listening to K-Love or whatever the local Protestant station is where you are, where you're going to get heresy, but at least it's not going to be stuff about how evil Christianity is. We just have to be careful with that stuff. So when we're listening to Christian, or when we're listening to metal, you want to know what the bands are ahead of time and specifically what songs are appropriate and what's not. So I'll give you guys an example of the band Judas Priest. Now, growing up, my main three bands I listened to were Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and Queensryche. Now, Rob Halford, the lead singer of Judas Priest, is a pretty open homosexual about his lifestyle. He hasn't been in the closet for the last 30 years. I don't think it was a surprise to anyone given the studs and leather and way that he dressed. But he also makes Christmas albums. So there are some songs Judas Priest has written where you could go, oh, that, the message of the song is not explicitly anti-Christian. And there's other songs that Judas Priest has that are pretty terrible, pretty openly demonic. And then in his solo stuff, he's out there making Christmas albums with his family. So even within artists or within bands, some or even all of what they put out might not be appropriate to listen to or wise to listen to. And that's why discernment is one of the highest virtues that we teach. Now, of course, the saints would all tell you not to listen to metal at all. Let's not delude ourselves about that, right? We have to understand that we are, in a sense, condescending to our own weaknesses when we say, okay, yes, I'm going to keep listening to metal, but at least it's going to be Christian or at the very least not satanic music. And we hope that God condescends to our weakness in that way for listening to this stuff too. And again, some stuff you don't want to listen to at all. And of course, I'm not promoting the band Judas Priest and talking about them just because I grew up listening to them. I do think Glenn Tipton is one of the best rock guitarists of all time. KK Downey I don't care for as much in either his musical output or with his new spin-off of Judas Priest, which he has cleverly called KK's Priest. It's not wholesome music. It's not meant to be wholesome, but I'm not promoting that stuff. I'm just saying it's what I grew up listening to. Iron Maiden has a lot of songs about history or poetry or books, but they also have some stuff that you wouldn't want to listen to. Queensryche is more philosophical, very different from other metal bands. It would be great if Mr. Patriarch could rejoin us since he was the one guiding this discussion with the topics and questions. Can you guys out there still hear me? I can see the comments. Triumph, great example of a rock band with a lot of Christian themes. Not always. there's some things they say where you go, oh, I don't know if that really aligns with my beliefs. Talking about the magic in your heart and everything. But Fight the Good Fight, yeah, it's a great song. He's still going too. Rick, what's his name? Singer, songwriter for Triumph. They had some great stuff. Okay, you guys can hear me. Excellent. Yeah, Polyphia is an example of a band that I will never listen to. It's all very like openly dualistic, Gnostic, satanic themes. You can see in the color choices they use, the contrast of up and down. I mean, it's not too hard to figure out what that guy believes. Obviously, a very talented guitarist. Ironically, the prolific guitarist does not listen to rock music. I think he only listens to rap, I think is what he said, if I'm remembering right, which kind of explains that kind of thudding hip hop undertones of their music. It's not a band I enjoy. I don't listen to them. But, if you watch that kid play, I'm forgetting his name, Tim something, his brain is a metronome, kind of the way James Hetfield's brain is a metronome, but he mixes all those harmonic runs in, very interesting stuff. Speaking of Hetfield, Metallica is not a Christian band, but I can't think of any music they put out that was promoting lust, promoting sin. Maybe it's out there, I just haven't heard those songs. I was actually just listening today and yesterday to the song King Nothing, which is about the man who wants to be king and play at being a king, chasing gold and fame, and the castle crumbles and you're left with just a name. Where's your crown, King Nothing? That's a pretty wholesome message about the emptiness of ambition and materialism. I don't know if any of the members of Metallica are Christians, but the fact that they aren't promoting sin says to me that one of them must be, right? At least one of them must be at least nominally Christian, or one would hope, right? One would hope, one would perhaps think. Speaking of the emptiness of ambition, my wife and I just watched a phenomenal movie called Cars. You guys ever seen a Pixar movie called Cars? I know we're getting a little off topic here, but we're talking about art and Christian themes, so it's also somewhat related. If you haven't seen the Pixar movie Cars, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. The plot is the main race car, Lightning McQueen, wants to win the Piston Cup, and then he has some challenges, obstacles on the way to the race, and the lessons he learns. It's a great movie. Mr. Patriarch has rejoined us. Welcome back.
Thank you. Apologies, everyone. Yes. Aaron's got the right of it. Patriarch out indeed. I'm sorry. Yeah, nothing I could do about it. I tried to send out a tweet and then it just crashed the whole internet. So what did I miss?
We were just talking. I was just talking about the movie Cars a little bit, the Pixar movie Cars, on the topic of Christian themes in art, and that came up because I was talking about the Metallica song King Nothing, which, while it doesn't explicitly promote Christianity, is against, it's talking about the emptiness of selfish ambition and the desire to accumulate material things, which is also the theme of Cars. So that's pretty much where we were at when you popped back into the stream.
An excellent choice, a very based choice, Cars, yes. Yes, I guess sort of back onto the subject of the music. First off, again, apologies, guys, for the internet. I have no idea what's happened to my internet the past couple of days, but hope to be right today. If it cuts out for another extended time, I'll cancel this and we'll try to reschedule for some time in the future. Apologies. So let me go back to my notes here. So often bands, which I would say there's three types of ways in which I think there's positive spiritualism or Christianity to be found in metal music. The first kind is the sort of unaffiliated strain, sort of like what we were talking about with Cars, right? So it's not necessarily a Christian movie. The band members might not even be Christian, but there's a recognition of the need of the transcendence and a dissatisfaction with materialism. So a band that I find an example of that would be a band like Soundgarden. specifically the song "Searching with My Good Eye Closed." That entire song is all about. It's a very existential song with pretty sort of poetic and sort of colorful lyrics. It's not sort of explicitly a black and white thing, but the whole idea um, is I'm looking. He's looking for a paradigm that he can pass on, and he's wondering if it's in the sky and things like that. And it's not hostile at all to sort of again this need for reaching for higher things. And there's a number of songs specifically from Soundgarden which are kind of like that. And again, this dissatisfaction with sort of life as it exists and sort of the material sort of day-to-day world. And another song sort of more in that vein, less spiritual, like Searching with My Good Eye Closed, would be a song called The Day I Tried to Live, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. It's all about just, again, this sort of dissatisfaction with sort of materialism and sort of the life that he finds himself in. Some people might say it's sort of nihilistic, but I don't necessarily think that. I believe the song is very much recognizing that there's probably got to be something more. And, one more time around, maybe I'll figure it out in the case of the song lyrics. And if you look at other bands, sort of more from the Gothenburg scene, a lot of the melodic death metal bands from Sweden, I do also find this. Now, the vocalists for some of these bands are not Christian. I know that the Anders Freden from In Flames, he's basically an agnostic. The vocalist from Dark Tranquillity is an atheist. But even there, I think what we're seeing a lot of times is the basically romanticism with the capital R, and it's like they can't escape the fact that nobody can functionally be an atheist. So the song like Satellites and Astronauts, it's about sort of being in space on the one hand, but on the other, it's really about sort of existential questions and sort of wondering your place in the world. And I think that's all sort of positive things, especially for an audience who is not explicitly Christian. I think songs like that can be nice sort of gateway drugs into orthodoxy, so to speak. So what would you say, Brother Augustine, for this specific type of music, which is not necessarily Christian, but is spiritually friendly, let us say? How do you think that can play into maybe helping other people get in touch with positive spiritualism and then later Christianity?
Well, I think what you said a second ago kind of hits the nail on the head, where I think a lot of times people start looking towards something more, something transcendent, comes from a dissatisfaction with life and the paradigm that we're raised in and taught to live in and taught to pursue. You have many famous rich people that they devoted their lives to attaining fame and wealth, and then they got there and realized, wait a second, I feel completely empty now that I've achieved my goal. And not that you have to be rich and famous to realize the emptiness of materialism. And I think that dissatisfaction, especially for people that already have everything they're told they should have, people that are not poor, at least they're not going hungry, they have everything to be comfortable, and they're so miserable, people start to think, well, there's got to be more than this, right? There's something in our soul, I think, that recognizes that we're meant to be more than that life is meant to be more than that. And even if they haven't found Christ yet, or Christ hasn't found them yet, however you want to perceive that to yourself, there's that part of the human soul that's made in the image and likeness of God that no one can escape from, right? That's always there. That's always the foundation of who we are. It's both our alpha and our omega, right? It's our beginning and our end. It's our telos, it's our end point. It's the blueprint for what a human is, and also the end point for where we're headed. What we're supposed to grow into is theosis, right? The restoration of the likeness of God in our own souls. And so that part of us that can never really get away from the truth depending on where you're starting from, can recognize in lyrics like that, even if it's not explicitly Christian, like, hey, these guys are onto something. They're experiencing something I'm experiencing, which is that these things around me are not making me happy. I have the things that I'm told are supposed to make me happy, and I'm not. There must be something other. There must be, we have that yearning for something more, something transcendent, as you said. So I think it can be a step in the right direction. I mentioned while you were away that I listened to a lot of Queensryche. I mean, I did when Jeff Tate and Chris DeGarmo, especially, were still part of the band. They're not now what they once were. That was their killer songwriting team. That's not Christian music, but there's certainly a lot of deeper themes to it, talking about hypocrisy, even religious hypocrisy. The theme of Operation Mindcrime is, to a large extent, religious hypocrisy, which I have no problem criticizing. Just that, the chasing of money, the starting of wars with other countries, it makes you, things that make you think a little bit deeper than the average song might. That kind of thing for me as a 16-year-old, 18-year-old, 20-year-old was a step in the right direction, because I thought, okay, good. I'm not the only person experiencing this, realizing that these things are maybe not everything that they're chalked up to be. Now I don't know if Jeff Tate will ever become Christian. I'm just glad the man is singing again and sounds a lot better than he has recently. He can't quite sing like he did on Mindcrime, of course, but that was a long, long time ago.
Hitting
I
those
think you're onto something.
falsetto notes is a bit hard.
Well, the thing is, they weren't falsetto back then. He was hitting really high notes first his chest voice goes higher than most baritones by itself, but then even in mixed voice, a lot of his really piercing high notes were actually not falsetto. But for the average human being, you'd have to go to falsetto to hit it. And some of the notes I couldn't hit even in falsetto. But yeah, he was one of the most powerful voices. But I'm talking specifically about the lyrical content, where it can be a step in the right direction, but you don't want to end there, because seeking something more without landing on Christ, like you're saying, it can lead to a sort of nihilism. It can lead to not hypocrisy, heresy. It can lead to Gnosticism, right? Because all of these non-Christian groups also are transcendent above the material in a certain sense, but they don't have the right context. They don't have the right paradigm that can actually heal you and save you. Maybe it can vibe with you and give you someone to commiserate with on the emptiness of materialism. But what can that lead to? That can also lead to revolution, right? It can lead to the killing of tens of millions of people. So you want to make sure, if you set foot down the anti-materialist path, that you end up on the right square of the grand chessboard, so to speak. You want to find the right paradigm and not end up in some goofy system that doesn't actually help you in any meaningful way.
I think that's a good point. And it's it's sort of one of those things where, yeah, that's sort of a good entry phase. But like you say, if you just sort of end up spinning your wheels there without ever finding, the capital T truth, the end result to that very often is despair and nihilism. So it starts off with this sort of rebellion against the modern world, if I may use the phrase, a revolt against the modern world. But again, if you don't have sort of if you don't have a runway to land down on where truth resides, then it just basically turns into manifest anger, despair, and it's not a good place to be. So on the one hand, at least you're not a Kool-Aid drinking normie who just sort of doesn't think about anything and is happy with your subpar life. But on the other hand, if you recognize a lot of the problems but don't find a solution and have something to have ultimate hope and faith in, then the end result can be very destructive, not just for yourself, but potentially for those around you. And I think that's sort of what ended up happening a lot with a lot of these, rock stars and whatever, who ended up sort of going off the deep end and taking their own lives either slowly or quickly and violently. Like I think about somebody like Lane Staley from Alice in Chains. I think it's like a classic example, somebody who, if you read the lyrical content of Alice in Chains, a lot of it is pretty dark and, but at the same time seems to be yearning for something more without ever getting to an answer, Lane Staley just implodes. He just becomes a heroin addict and then withers away. So you don't want to. The critique is not enough, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and I can bring it back to King Nothing again, just as such a great example. They were raging alcoholics when they wrote this song, right? So they realized the emptiness of materialism, but they didn't have a solution. So they just covered that pain of that realization with substance abuse. And there's no sense of peace or joy in transcending materialism. It's just complaining about that it's empty. But that's only halfway there. Like finding the problem is a good step. But like you're saying, if you don't land on the solution, then you just end up destroying yourself and potentially other people too.
Absolutely. Now, another type of, I guess we could say, Christian thematic influence on metal, aside from this sort of phase one, sort of reaching for the transcendent, revolting against the modern world, blah, 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 is people who use explicitly Christian themes within their songwriting, but are not necessarily Christian themselves. But are by no means hostile to it. So an example that I always like to think of is, early Black Sabbath. What was that song they had? It was basically like the first Christian metal song.
After
I want to say it was on Matt. It might have been After Forever. But the bassist and primary lyricist for the song Geezer Butler was himself a Catholic. I know he was raised that way. And I think now that he's sort of gotten on his old age, he's sort of re-embraced Catholicism.
Huh.
But there's a lot of themes that you can find sprinkled throughout Black Sabbath's music, which is playing on these Christian themes. And another sort of more, without, again, being an explicitly Christian band. And another band that I think also did that, and one of the prime examples that I always like is the song Flesh and the Power It Holds by Death, which is like one of the pioneering death metal bands. I mean, the song basically reads like a fire and brimstone, like Presbyterian, old school Presbyterian sermon against like the dangers of fleshly delights and like how it can take you and destroy your life and stuff. And you read it and you're like, yeah, no, this is basically 100% in line with Christian doctrine.
Yeah, it's a great song.
But there's a lot of bands, a lot of songs like that, which again sort of take these Christian themes and they play with them, and they sort of take the messaging and they're like, yeah, I might not necessarily be a Christian, but here's a piece of wisdom which I'm going to use for the sake of, speaking at least an element of the truth, while at the same time constructing great riffs around it.
Yeah. I have to address one of the comments here. Somebody asked, have you heard of Cage? Hell Destroyer's their best album. I've been listening to Cage for at least 10 years. I discovered them a long time ago, their album Astrology, obviously not a Christian name of the thing. And as soon as I heard them, I thought, these guys are like the most talented classic metal band I've heard in recent times. And I moved to where I'm presently at from San Diego, and that's where they all live. So I used to go see them at Brick by Brick, a club out there, a music club. And I would just hang out with the members like before or after the show at the bar. If they were just there, waiting for the set to start, talking to them. They're friendly guys. It's funny because Dave Garcia, the guitarist, is this enormous Hulk bodybuilder, and he writes most of the music. And Sean Peck, the singer, I think has the best voice in metal right now, to be totally honest. Hell Destroyer, it is a great album with Christian themes. In fact, I asked Sean one of the times that I saw them, I was like, so are you a Christian? Like, what's going on with the album? And I don't think he's a Christian, but he did say to me that there would be no metal without the Bible. So I think he sees the Bible more as like providing some really cool themes for metal music, because they also have other albums and songs that are not Christian themed. Now, the interesting thing about Cage, one of the interesting things, is that they call out the Pharisees in one of their early songs. He says they've taken control. The ones that Christ called the Pharisees, they've taken control. So a little bit woke on certain cues, certain questions that I won't go into on your channel because I don't want to get demonetized or anything. In fact, one of the jackets that I have in my closet here is signed by all the members of Cage. Just because I was so thrilled to finally meet them. I've been listening to them for so long, and I was like, oh my gosh, you guys live in the town over. I get to come hang out and see you. But yeah, Hell Destroyer is a pretty cool album. I like to listen to it when I'm working out. So I thank you for that question, Clown Piece. I didn't know anyone else had heard of Cage. They're not as well known as you'd think they would be given their level of talent.
Excellent. Yes. And we see some other comments here in the thing. Dio. I think Dio is another one of those artists rather, which I think also sort of falls into this vein. Again, using Christian themes, not hostile to religion, but not necessarily practicing Christian himself, but taking these Christian themes and utilizing them within his lyrics and whatnot. And then also, of course, okay.
I was saying I just watched, so I'm scrolling through looking for a picture of me with the singer from Cage. And I also, there it is. Yeah, there's, that's Sean Peck doing the soy boy face pointing at me. This is from, let's see, 2019. So that must be one of the shows, June 24th, 2019. I also met Tim Owens there because they sing together now. The Ripper.
Tim, I was going to say Tim Ripper Owens.
Yeah, he's actually a really humble, normal guy, which I appreciate. There's no sense of like diva-ness about Tim at all. He's like a blue collar dude that sings to put food on his family's table, basically, which I appreciate. But as far as Dio, so it's funny you bring that up because I just found and watched with my wife and then tweeted a video of Ronnie James Dio in 2005 in a Russian Orthodox church, lighting candles, being an Orthodoxy respecter. He was in like Volgograd or something with his, what looked like his wife and maybe kids, I'm not sure. And so then me and my wife were talking about Dio because, one of the best singers of all time. There's no question there. He's been doing it since like the 60s when he was a teenager with different bands, Ronnie Dio and the Prophets. Then he had Elf and all these different bands. He was great from the beginning. So we found a video of him talking about religion. And he was basically a disaffected Catholic that didn't like, the nuns hitting him with a ruler and turned away from Catholicism. And so he doesn't have Christian views on God, but he also, he was never into the Satanism stuff. He didn't agree with bands burning down churches and promoting Satan. He talks about all of this in the interview. And he always made sure that he wasn't going there, with his music or with his themes. And it was just cool to see that because in Black Sabbath, he talks about this, there's all this dark imagery and aesthetic and all that. And they would never disavow Satan. They would never disavow evil in interviews, even though in some of their songs, like in War Pigs, for example, that's a pretty Christian song, right? It talks about Satan laughing and spreading his wings at these evil people that think they're powerful, but they're actually just slaves to Satan at the end of the day. And then I looked up, okay, well, I wonder if Ozzy's a Christian. Turns out he became an Anglican in like 2013 or something. So he joined a Christian organization later in life. And then he said something that was actually very sad. He said he's tried to read the Bible multiple times, but it's just not written in a language he can understand. Not talking about English, but I think, the translated maybe King James version or something for like a guy that grew up poor in a working town in England, he doesn't speak that language, as he said, but he's at least tried. He joined the Anglicans and tried to read the Bible. So it's a step in the right direction, certainly.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a lot of people, again, in rock and metal who sort of fall into the Dio category of people who are not Christian themselves, but are for whatever reason. A lot of it is, again, past trauma or just basically struggling with belief, but they're not hostile to religion. And they, again, use a lot of these themes because they do see the wisdom in it. And yeah, they're just sort of on the journey, whether consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah.
And Dio's a good example of that. I'm just reading some of the comments here. I'm seeing all these like prog rock mentions.
I mean,
Eventualist, howdy, bud.
at the very least, you never heard about Dio being a degenerate, you know, biting the heads off of chickens or bats or cheating on his wife or using drugs. So I think despite his turning away from Catholic doctrine, you know, at least some of that morality stuck with him. It seems, just based on his character and what I know about his life. As far as Christian prog rock, Theocracy is great. They're a Protestant prog rock band. They're basically like Christian Dream Theater. Uh, Maybe not at quite the same level, but it's a step in the right direction. And there's also a band called Judicator with my friend John Yelland is the singer for Judicator, which is not a Christian band because he's the only Christian member of it. He's an Orthodox Christian, but he's been trying to kind of pull the band in a more Christian direction recently. Judicator's got some really good tunes out there too.
That's an excellent name for a band, by the way, Judicator.
Yeah.
I'm seeing another one here. Sabbath never praise Satan, indeed. And also, I just saw sort of a funny list here. So Sabaton, Dio, Powerwolf. So this opens the whole can of worms of power metal. So power metal is basically, you know, for those of the audience who don't know, imagine if like Lord of the Rings was a genre of music. That's basically what power metal is.
Yep. Fair.
Yeah, like Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons. They lean very heavily on mythical themes, fantasy, but also, you know, magic, but also very much oftentimes the religious. So there'll be like a lot of Catholic symbolism in a lot of these bands. And so, yeah, with them, I think it's basically very hard to get away from that kind of thing. In terms of, I mean, if you're going to be writing an album about like the Crusades, you know, you gotta address the Christian question, at least to a certain extent. Now, if we look to sort of the third type of band, so we've talked about, again, the sort of non-believing, you know, transcendent seeking, angsty bands, you know, like the Soundgardens, the melodic death metal bands from like Gothenburg, et cetera, et cetera. Christian themes within lyrics. Now, there's the third kind, which is members who are explicitly Christian or, you know, quietly Christian, whether they can be in a quote unquote Christian band or not, who rely very heavily on Christianity for their lyrical content, or at least rely on it infrequently. Now, or who rely on it semi-frequently. Now, one of the bands which a lot of you probably haven't heard of, but I like them pretty good, is a band called Crowbar. Now, Crowbar is one of these bands that was really big in the New Orleans like sludge metal scene. So the vocalist and guitarist for Crowbar is very good friends with Phil Anselmo of Pantera. And he's also one of the guitarists in Down, which is Phil Anselmo's biggest band after he got out of Pantera. Some people would say Superjoint Ritual, but I like to pretend that they don't exist. Like Down is a much better band and much more consistently good. So Down is kind of a super group, and Kirk Weinstein of Crowbar is involved in this. Now, Crowbar, especially in some of their more recent records, has got He Knows, Clown Piece Knows, Crowbar, good band, very doomy, but massive riffs, slow and heavy, excellent sound, and they um, it's like I said, especially in their more recent albums, lean extremely heavy on Christian themes within their lyrical content. And
Hmm.
both Kirk Weinstein himself and the drummer, I think his name's might be Jimmy. I'm not sure, but they're basically half the band are Christian. And one of their more recent records, as I recall, was called "Sever the Wicked Hand,"
Hmm.
and they have
Bass.
another one. Yeah, exactly. They have another album called "The Serpent Only Lies." So, I mean, just from the album titles alone, you could kind of get what they're getting at.
Yeah.
So, of course, "Sever the Wicked Hand" is all about like finding those things in your life which, you know, make you a terrible person and just getting rid of them. "Serpent Only Lies," of course, is about how Satan is, a deceiver and whatnot. And again, they're not a Christian band, so to speak, but they are, if that makes sense. They're not like signed up to a Christian label or anything,
Right.
but
Right.
that that type of message really, really, really comes through in a lot of their lyrics. So that would be sort of my hidden gem that I would encourage you guys to check out is Crowbar.
Hmm.
Again, New Orleans sort of sludge metal band, real heavy, extremely heavy, but they're really good, and they've been around I think for about 25 years, and their lyrics are extremely, especially more recently, very you could say pro-Christian. So,
Awesome.
any other bands you would add to that list, Brother Augustine?
Well, I do like explicitly Christian bands like Theocracy, Demon Hunter. Not all of Demon Hunter's songs are about Christ. Some of them are. All their albums sound kind of different. They just came out with a new album that's actually a lot harder and heavier than what I usually listen to. So I haven't really sat down and gone through it too much yet. Obviously, the band that I'm in with Nick Leonard, Akathist, we have a couple singles up on my channel right now. We're explicitly Christian, explicitly Orthodox. There's an Orthodox cross in the logo, just in case people didn't get it, because there's nothing sounds pleasant to me about being an Orthodox Christian in a band with a bunch of atheists and like trying to rein them in. I know that John and Judicator kind of struggles with that because the other guys are not Christians. They curse on social media to promote when they're promoting a song or just in general, and I know that's been difficult for him. I know there's old stuff they've done together that he doesn't want to do anymore because he wasn't always Orthodox. There was a death in his family that kind of made him reconsider life and its meaning and purpose. That kind of pushed him in the right direction towards Christ, towards the church. I'm trying to think if there's any other secretly or not so secretly Christian bands. I mean, Skillet is a pretty popular rock band that has a lot of Christian themes in it. Not all the time. Um, but at the very least, a Christian band is not going to have degenerate stuff like Motley Crue might play or something like that, right? Like those are the kinds of metal bands that I would just never listen to. I will admit, in my secular days, I thoroughly enjoyed a lot of Steel Panther, but obviously, as a Christian now, I can't justify listening to even a single song of theirs. There's an artist I'm going to be interviewing in a couple of weeks. I see by your cackle, you know who Steel Panther is. Um,
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
interviewing an artist in a couple of weeks named Hara Sakaria, who basically his music is like The Weeknd. It's not a rock or metal. It sounds like a guy called The Weeknd, who is at least baptized Ethiopian Orthodox, even though all his music's about fornication and drugs. And Hara was just chrismated a couple of weeks ago, and used to make pretty degenerate music in certain senses. And I met him at the first Montanica event, and we talked about this, how we both wanted to baptize the genre of music that we're into. For him, it's that, I don't even know what R&B, I guess you would call that, pop R&B. For me, metal and doom metal in particular. And we have some great Orthodox doom metal bands, by the way, already. And so Hara is going to come on because he just released an album called Salvation, which still talks about themes of lust and drug use and alcoholism, but from a Christian perspective of like looking back on those things, being miserable and wanting to find salvation and not finding it in these activities. So I'm really looking forward to having him on. I don't remember if the word Christ is actually present in the lyrics, but it's an album that's repentant about his past and his struggles, and that should be a lot of fun. There is a great doom metal band that's just one guy. It's actually a priest, Father John Wheeling, has a band called Patericon, Paterikon. He does all the instruments, all the recording, all the singing, and he's very prolific. He puts out a new album, like it feels like every other week. I was joking with Greg Trulia earlier. He's constantly coming out with new stuff, and it sounds a lot like early Black Sabbath and the band called Trouble. The singer from Trouble sadly just passed away recently, Eric Wagner. He was in a really good band called The Skull, which was based on an album that Trouble made. And that was a Christian band, because the Trouble, I mean, Psalm 9 is one of their albums. He struggled with drugs and sin like everyone in that, like many people in that world do. But it was always a struggle with it. It wasn't a celebration of sin. And so if you watch his video for like The Lonely Road Turns Dark, for example, or other videos he did with The Skull, he's wearing a cross. He kind of looks like an Orthodox priest, actually. Eric Wagner did before he died. Now, I tried to be their new singer. They never got back to me. I talked with whoever runs their Facebook after he died. I said, are you guys going to keep going, keep playing? And they said that we're not sure. I said, well, hey, here's my stuff. I sent them an Akathist video for Bones of the Living Dead saying, I'd love to. I think my voice would go well with your stuff. I'm a Christian. And they left me on red. They left me on red, but no response. Unfortunately, it would have been cool to sing for The Skull, but they're also a touring band, and I'm not a touring person. I have a wife and a full-time job. I'm not going to go on tour and do all that. Local tours and shows would be fun. It's unfortunate because Nick, my bandmate and Akathist, lives on the other side of the country, so we can't tour either. Hopefully we're going to have an album out relatively soon, but we're both very busy people. Other than that, yeah, Trouble has Christian themes. The Skull certainly did. They had 2 albums, I believe, or The Endless Road Turns Dark, not Lonely Road Turns Dark. Endless Road Turns Dark. I'm trying to think of anyone else. Oh, Place of Skulls is a doom metal band fronted by Victor Griffin, who used to be the front man for Pentagram. Obviously, he was not a Christian at the time. He ended up in jail for, I forgot, I don't remember if it was Grand Theft Auto or something. He ended up in jail for and has been struggling to find holiness ever since. So now he has a Christian band called Place of Skulls. He occasionally will cover an old Pentagram song like Relentless. It's his music. He can do what he wants with it. But Place of Skulls is very explicitly Christian. They have an album called The Black Is Never Far that I've always appreciated. Really good stuff. And I think that's pretty much my list as far as Christian metal bands go. I might think of something else later, but I think that's pretty much my whole list.
It's funny, as you were saying that, I was just reading through Crowbar lyrics, and I'm like, yeah, these guys are basically a Christian band.
I'll have to check them out.
And again, Kirk Weinstein himself is again kind of like a gruff dude, but a gruff, sort of like rough around the edges, but nice, wholesome guy. But yeah, I'm just reading the lyrics for like "Walk with the Knowledge Wisely." I'll just read it. Just a sampling. It says, "Accept what God has given you, and you'll find the answer all around. Rise from the ashes and be heard with a deafening sound." That's great.
Wait, Weinstein is not exactly a Presbyterian name. Is he a fellow Jewish convert by chance?
No, Weinstein. It might be Winstein. I think he was born in the UK. But yeah, he was born in the UK from military parents, but he spent basically his whole life in New Orleans.
Okay. Kirk Winstein.
But yeah,
I'm going to click on early life. Let's see what we find. Nothing about his upbringing. Just musical stuff.
Yeah, I think he might. Yeah, he may be an Anglo, but I'm not sure. But I don't know. You look at him and he looks pretty American, but I don't know. but yeah, there's a ton of great stuff. And again, if you are a fan of doom metal, you'll really like a lot of Crowbar's.
I think I've heard one song. I think I've heard "Walk with Wisdom" or "Walk with Knowledge Wisely." I think that's the only song of theirs I've ever heard, though.
Yeah, but anyways, I see we got a super chat from the Prudentialist, $5. Thank you, sir. Just wanted to show some love, Brother Augustine. Enjoying your Minor Prophets series.
Oh, so thank God!
Mutual fan here.
Thank God. I've never done something that's gotten as few views as that series, which is kind of demoralizing, except that the 9 people who watch it really like it. And that kind of keeps me motivated to keep going with it. I find that stuff fascinating.
Yeah,
it's very sad that people don't watch it.
I hear you, man. I think that's sort of the curse of YouTube. Yeah. You find these niche topics that you're really interested and passionate about, and then just nobody watches it.
Well, he does. Thank you, Mr. Prudentialist.
Yeah. I'm finding that right now with my my go through of like I said, Reflections of a Russian Statesman by Pobia Denotsev. I listened to the audiobook when I was working this summer, and I'm like, this is so good. This is great. I gotta have more. The people must know. And then I create my first video, and 400 people watch it. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm good. Like, well, I'm gonna keep making them until the views get up.
I will force you to like this. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys will appreciate my base content.
That's right.
All right. From Feanor, thoughts on Tool?
Well,
I was never a big Tool fan myself. So I don't have much to say in terms of their lyrical content. Brother Augustine, what you got?
I've been saying for 10 years that Tool is interesting because it's the only band named after its fans. But in terms of music as well, I think they suck. I'm going to just say it. I've never liked it. I've had people try and explain why it's good to me. It's so overtly demonic. Just you can just smell it. You listen to a Tool song and you can just smell the demons. And Danny Carey, I mean, he plays, if you ever look at the drum kit that he plays with, at least one of them on tour, it's got Thelema logos on it, on the skins of the drums.
Really?
So he's obviously, yeah. So the guy's obviously deep into the occult. I've always found them to be depressing to listen to. Sure, they're talented at what they do, but and I get
time signatures, man.
Right, but I'm not trying to do math homework. I'm trying to enjoy a metal song. I don't want to have to sit there with a calculator and a compass and trying to figure out what time signature your song is in. When I want to think, I listen to Dream Theater. I've just never found Tool to be. It just doesn't appeal to me. And the people I know who like Tool have also turned me off of Tool more. Except I have one friend that I respect that likes Tool. He's probably listening to this. It's Jeremy Firth, who I had on my show from talking about his conversion from Mormonism. He loves Tool, but it's okay. We can be friends with people we disagree with, right?
Yeah.
But no, I've never liked it. Never liked it.
Dream Theater. That's another band which does deal in Christian themes in their lyrics a bit.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, songs like Endless Sacrifice and Learning to Live, there's, when temptation brings me to my knees and I lay here drained of strength, show me kindness, show me beauty, show me truth. That's a beautiful lyric,
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Tool. There's other much better progressive metal bands, in my opinion, than Tool.
I also just
another band which
good. It doesn't sound like it's produced in a quality way to me.
Yeah.
See, we got a comment
here.
Danny Carey has a Crowley collection. Look at this. See that by Feanor down there? Carey has a Crowley collection, practices black magic, literally does ritual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can smell that in their music, and it's just repulsive to me. Yeah, of course he's a great drummer. Yeah. No one's arguing that.
But his drumming is unmatched. He is a good drummer, but I don't know. I could think of some other guys. He's a good drummer. Another sort of progressive metal band, which is
Bobby Jarzabek is the much better drummer. than Danny Carey.
Yeah. Jazenbeck, yeah. No, he's really good. Gene Hoglan's also extremely good. The former drummer of Cynic, I'm not sure how he died, was also extremely good.
Oh, I don't know that. Who
Yeah,
was the Dream
Cynic is an
Theater
interesting band.
drummer? I'm trying to think. Mike something?
Mike Portnoy.
Yeah, Portnoy. Amazing.
Yeah, Portnoy is extremely good. But yeah, Cynic is an interesting band. They're a progressive metal band, which was like one of the early ones to uh, basically incorporate sort of jazz fusion elements. And both the drummer for Cynic and the guitarist recorded Human by Death. So there were session musicians on that album.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, now the religious and their music is rife with religious themes, but in a sort of Eastern mystic Buddhist sort of way. So again, not Christian, but again, not anti-theistic, if you want to put it that way. But musically, they're brilliant. I really like them. All right, let me just go through here, checking the comments. Lost in the wheels of confusion.
Jars on Beck. So families are close, but put a B after the M. Bobby Jars. He plays for a band called Spastic Inc. That if you want to talk about trying to do math homework while you're listening to music, I can't even conceive of what those guys are doing.
Yeah.
I genuinely just don't know.
It's pretty insane. Yeah, Spastic Inc.
Yeah, for Halford too. Yeah, there you go. Jonathan Beck.
Yeah. And doesn't he have a brother, Ron Jazenbeck, who's also a guitarist?
Yeah, he's the guitarist for Spastic Inc. And he also builds his own guitars, from what I understand, just because he can't find one that he actually likes. So he just like takes pieces from other ones and puts it together. Yeah, those guys are crazy, man. Like, have you ever seen a Wild Hair that they did? They basically put a progressive metal track under the animated movie Bambi. Now, I don't know. I can't imagine how much the drugs cost that led them to come up with this idea. But if you watch the clip called A Wild Hair on YouTube, like they'll match the bass drum with like Thumper's foot thumping on the ground and like play a major key flute piece when Bambi's like wandering around. It's really bizarre. But it's really good too. Can you play videos from can we play it on the stream or no? Craig somehow played a video on the stream earlier, but I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I think I could do it, but the only problem is like I don't trust my internet enough to try it at this point.
Fair enough.
I'm very gun shy right now.
Understandable. Yeah.
But yeah, let me see. So yeah, as a finger picker, the thumb is best timekeeper. I don't know, man. Like, yeah, he had something interesting. He was basically complaining about how he can't play fingerstyle fast enough to keep up with the metal, but it's okay. There's a lot of guys who can't do that though. Like I think also in Spastic Inc. was the bassist Steve DiGiorgio, and he is absolutely insane. Like in terms of his fingerstyle playing, very very articulate, extremely fast. He's basically like the Billy Sheehan of extreme metal.
Oh wow!
Very very good. So personally find metal bass lines energizing. They can be. So I am predominantly a bassist myself, and a lot of times the bass just kind of follows the guitars. Sort of a more simplified way. There are some bands though which can do some really cool, interesting stuff with bass. Cynic was one of those bands which really kicked metal bass playing up another notch. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the bassist was a trained jazz bassist, and he was like a music professor and like, you know, basically a nerd essentially in a progressive death metal band. But yeah, but it was much more tasteful than a lot of the sort of, you know, up and down the fretboard sort of wankery that you find in a lot of prog progressive metal, and that's one of the reasons why I do like Cynic. Is they're great songwriters in addition to being good and very talented and innovative musicians.
Well, that's important because some of the guys that are just profoundly talented, I don't enjoy listening to or watching. So some people get on my case for saying this, but people like Steve Vai, I just can't listen to. Satriani, I love listening to. But Steve Vai, I just looked him up a couple months ago and saw this video of him playing this double neck guitar he built or triple neck guitar he built. And watching him play it, to me, it was just like almost a caricature of like self-indulgent showing off, where it didn't sound like the song was written to be entertaining to the audience or pleasing to the audience. It was just like, look what I can do. So if you have that talent, but you can't, or like Michelangelo Battio is maybe an even better example. Have you ever seen him playing the four-neck guitar?
He's the worst.
Like, why are you doing this? What is this accomplishing? Yeah, it looks cool once, but like, are you even serious? So I'd rather listen to someone that can write really good songs, but isn't necessarily as talented as someone who's profoundly talented, but doesn't write good songs. Of course, the ideal is both. Like for me, Gary Moore for me is like just kind of the ultimate rock musician, just phenomenal singer, unbelievable guitar player, guys like that, Coco Montoya, just really, really incredible stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and there are some guys who do. It is very hard though, yeah, because like you say, there's a lot of these guys who are extremely technical. Like we'll call it the Badio effect, right? So
yeah, really, it's the Malmsteen effect, though, isn't it?
Yeah, the Malmsteen effect. Yeah, they can play harmonic minor arpeggios like nobody's business, but then when it comes time to write a song, it's he can basically reproduce like Baroque music on an electric guitar, kind of. But that's
cool to hear once, like that was neat.
Yeah,
and then that's
but like, but one guitarist I think who really does sort of has that amazing technical capacity, but is also a good songwriter was I thought Jeff Loomis from Nevermore was very good.
Yeah,
in that regard.
Yeah, Nevermore was an interesting band. Isn't he in Arch Enemy now?
I think he is. I think he got hired on by them. I never really listened to Arch Enemy.
Well, it's openly satanic, so it's probably for the best.
Yeah. All right, from Vingwil here, Mr. Patriarch. Oh, and I'll just mention, guys, we're going to be closing up here in a minute. But if you have any last questions or comments, get them in now. We're going to be heading out. We want to be respectful of Michael's time.
Thanks,
from Vingul, Mr. Patriarch, what do you two think of Dark Throne? Isn't their music so grim and badass that you can look past their attitude towards Christianity? Nah, not really. So Dark Throne, I think, first off, I've never been really a big fan of, second wave of like early 90s black metal. Some people like that production, but to me, it sounds like it was recorded with a cell phone in a trash can. And I'm just not really into that. I can appreciate the aesthetic of, the tremolo picked minor tonality thing, that's fine. And I don't think Dark Throne, although I don't claim to be an expert on their music or anything, but they, I don't think they're like satanic in any serious sense. They might have like a shtick where it's kind of, they sort of give that vibe, but they're not like a lot of these other black metal bands, which are openly satanic or anti-Christian, like Burzum or something. So, but yeah, I've just never really been much of a black metal fan. Thoughts on black metal, Michael?
I'm not into it. I've never been into it. I just looked up Dark Throne. I've never heard of them before. And they have the corpse paint, but like, since I've never been into black metal and I grew up watching professional wrestling as a kid, they all just look like Sting to me. the wrestler Sting that had the white face and the black makeup?
Yeah, they do.
Like that's all that I see when I look at these guys. I'm like, oh yeah, that reminds me of pro wrestling in 7th grade. So like there's a nostalgia that makes me like that aesthetic, but it just comes off as so goofy and larpy. Like, and I for me, like harmony is such an important part. Melody is a big important part. Lyrics are important. If I can't understand what you're saying, then I'm not going to listen to your music. Like it would be better without vocals than to have vocals that are unintelligible. Yeah, see, Feanor here is saying black metal is basically autistic screeching. That's very much how I feel about it. I've never been into it.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of the vocals in black metal. Yeah, they're just entirely unintelligible. It sounds like an angry lizard, like yelling into a mic until it clips.
Yeah.
Again in a trash can. It's just I have no idea. I have no idea what they're saying. I'm like yeah, I can tell you're trying to say something, but
yeah, it's like when they're
you
recording
just
on a
sound like a
microphone.
pterodactyl.
Yeah, it's like when it goes into the red, the clipping, they're like, okay, good, that's where it's supposed to be. Like they kind of don't get that the red is where you're not supposed to be. Like you're supposed to dial it into the green, but that got lost in translation somehow.
Yeah. No. From Wandering Panda, WCW years right there. Yep. Sting.
Memories, man.
I remember
Goldberg.
I was never super into wrestling, but a friend of mine had Goldberg, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yeah.
No, he was in WWF.
I remember that era. There was some fun N64 games.
Oh, they were the best. I had so much fun with those games. Then they let you create a custom wrestler, and you would just like create superheroes and Spider-Man. Man, those were good times.
Yeah, indeed. All right, guys. Well, I don't see any more comments. So thank you very much for joining me. Again, apologies for the technical issues, but it looks like we're able to get around those, thankfully. In closing, anything you'd like to say or shill again for the audience before we leave, Brother Augustine?
Well, I did realize one thing I forgot. I don't know if you guys know, my wife makes these really beautiful homemade Orthodox bracelets with like Theotokos charms and stuff. We've sold a bunch. We sold out of our stock in the first round, brought 3 more, or how many did we bring? We brought a bunch more to Montanica. This last one sold a bunch more there. There's 3 more up on the website. It's an Etsy website, and the shop's called Byzantine Bracelets. So if there are any women watching or guys that have a girlfriend or wife they'd like to get a nice Orthodox bracelet for, I definitely invite and encourage you to check out Byzantine Bracelets on Etsy. If you can't find it, send me a message. I'll send you the link. Everyone so far who's gotten one has really liked it. They're really cool. My wife puts a lot of hard work into them. So beyond that, yeah, just if you'd like to check out my channel on YouTube, it's Brother Augustine. I'm also on Telegram, Gab, Twitter, and Rockfin. I had a podcast until recently when I just realized it wasn't worth the expense of keeping up. So yeah, other than that, no, I got nothing else. This has been a fun conversation. I got some new bands to check out. So thank you, Mr. Patriarch. Good to see you again. And thank you to everyone who participated today.
Fantastic. Yes, and I'll put a link to that in the comments after the show. Byzantine Bracelets on Etsy.
Yeah, I'll send you a link.
Thank you for tuning in, guys. This has been my first stream in a long while. Awesome. This has been my first stream in a long while. Hopefully, I can get the internet sorted out in the future. Next weekend, I'll probably be at an undisclosed location in rural Alaska. But if I can get the internet working out there, I have a stream planned with, what's his name? Aaron McIntyre. Yes. I wanted to call him Phil Collins, but that's sort of like an inside joke. But yes, Aaron McIntyre. Next week, we're going to be discussing sort of the more political, reactionary, and traditionalist elements within sort of metal music. So this has sort of been a 2-part series. This week we're hitting the spiritual, the Christian side. Next week, sort of more cultural, political angles. There's some pretty Fed posty lyrics, which I'm going to have some fun bringing up next stream. If you guys, again, want to support the channel, links to do so can be found below. Please subscribe. And I will see you guys again next time. Patriarch out.
See you guys.